right. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to BH24 Business Around the Clock, our weekly business show. Today, we have a very interesting topic, something hot that's been going around. We're talking about the RBZ debt assumption bill and relationship with the IMF. And in studio today, we have Mr. Persistence Gwanyanya. He is an independent economist with one of the leading banks in the country. How are you doing, Percy?
I'm doing fine, Lynn. How are you, Kuzi?
I'm good. It's great to actually have you back. Remember Percy actually opened...
He was our first
guest on Business Around the Clock. So it's great having you back.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, so how are things in the banking sector? I mean, of course, today we're talking about, the RBZ assumption bill, our relationship with the IMF. But, regarding the RBZ debt to bankers, I mean, please give us a little background about that.
About the RBZ assumption of the bill by the government. I think is a way of background. Let me say the Zimbabwean debt is, or the issue of debt is not peculiar to Zimbabwe alone. It has now become a global issue. You hear today about the global debt, the Eurozone debt crisis that has taken center stage in the economy, in the global economic arena. Suffice to mention that the issues that give rise to debt are almost the same across. It is about a government spending more than what it has. If you spend more than what you have, you obviously have to fund that expenditure. And the government has been funding that through borrowing. If a government runs budget deficits, it has to fund that from somewhere. In Zimbabwe, that was being funded from foreign and domestic borrowing. But obviously, you would want to understand why the central bank came into picture. You understand that the expenditures of government are done by line ministries. Why now the central bank is coming into picture? It is primarily on the background of the unprecedented economic decline that the country has gone through that time, that the central bank has to intervene with what they call the Eastwell Central Bank Governor GG, called extraordinary measures for extraordinary situations. So the central bank had to assume that duty from line ministries by undertaking what we call the quasi-fiscal activities. You might have heard about Bakosi, the basic commodity supply side intervention facility. You might have heard about the productivity sector facility, PSF. You might have heard about the agriculture sector productivity enhancement facility. That was ASPEF then. All these
the quasi-fiscal,
all these quasi-fiscal measures were funded by the central bank, and obviously you would want to understand it in the background of how did the central bank get that money?
The lender of last resort.
That money. Yeah. Yes, the money, it got it from basically the corporates. FCA corporates, they had to take some FCA corporates within banks. They also had to do some direct lendings between themselves and the companies. So this is the background to which the RBZ debt arose.
Well, we all remember those times, surely, right? As long as you're Zimbabwean or around the country. But we know that now the central government has taken it upon itself to assume this debt that was owed by the RBZ to the bankers, getting to improve the standing of the RBZ both locally and internationally. What thoughts do you have on this move by the government?
Lynn, the fact of the matter is the debt is already incurred, whether properly or improperly, it is already incurred. The central bank, RBZ, is a government institution. The government, for the sake of credibility, like we have rightfully said, has to meet these financial obligations. Remember, we operate in an international community, and that is very critical for international relationships between central banks and governments to happen. The government of Zimbabwe right now is in dire need of finance, external support. The repayment of that debt will obviously improve the country's rating by external agencies, by financiers, and will go a long way into getting the country approved back for more funding.
Yeah, but the current debt that was owed by the RBZ was around maybe $1.3 billion. But I'm sure many people are wondering if the government has the capacity to pay off its debt. What would you make of this?
I'm not so sure about the figure, but it might be something around those levels. But if you read the recently announced medium-term fiscal policy review, the government had put the validated debt at 200.4 million and has issued treasury bills in respect of that.
Oh, okay.
Yes, has issued treasury bills in respect of that. But obviously, I'm talking of validated debt at the moment.
Yeah.
It might be around the levels you're speaking.
But maybe that's the current amount that they need to actually clear.
Looking at the capacity, how government is going to pay that debt, it's painful for me to think of avenues through which government can pay this debt. You remember we are in a dollarized economy, and ideally the government could have paid this debt through printing money, which is what has actually caused that in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but yeah, because at the end of the day, we're using a currency we don't actually control.
Yes.
Yeah, and actually own it.
Yeah.
So the situation is a bit tricky. The government revenues are underperforming. You heard that the ministry revised down the growth target to 3.1, down from 6.1%. That was the initial target because of revenue underperformance. To fund that gap, the government is to come up with a whole range of fascist measures, which include increases in import duties and taxes on a wide range of commodities. You see, Zimbabweans are overburdened at the moment.
Yeah.
We cannot continue to increase taxes, but the government has got no other option in the current environment.
We're facing liquidity situation.
So that's why I'm saying it's hard for me to think about the funding of this debt. Yes, treasury bills have been issued, but they need to be honored at a certain point in time. They need to be honored.
Yeah. And given the fact that, over the past 5 or 6 years, we understand that the debt was earning an interest of about 12%, yes? But with the RBZ issuing the bills, the debt has now been offset to 2% interest. I mean, yes, we are in this liquidity crisis and we understand that it's tough for every Zimbabwean, right? And yes, that also includes the government. But how do you think that the creditors will feel about this drastic reduction in the interest?
For the sake of being pragmatic, I would want to view the return on the treasury bill not as a fair compensation. Ideally, not as a fair compensation, but as a salvage value, something you are trying to salvage yourself out of a situation.
Yeah.
At least something that is coming from a background of the pressure the government has at the moment. You cannot dream of wanting the government to pay 12% at the moment. No, it can't happen. The government is under serious financial pressure. It cannot afford to pay the 12%. Yes, 2% is a salvage value. Is something that we should take there is nothing that we can do at the moment.
Do you think that we should at least, as a people, commend our government for at least taking on this task to pay, even if it is 2%?
Definitely. One of the key issues for any policy to operate effectively is that the government should be credible. The central bank should be credible. The fact that they have given us something, it goes a long way in restoring some credibility. So yes, for the sake of credibility, yes, fine.
Yeah, I see. There's been a feeling across the financial sector that the conditions surrounding the debt assumption bill are not clear. Do you share the same sentiments?
Oh, I'm not privy to the conditions of the bill. I understand it's something that is before the parliament at the moment.
At the
as we
moment,
speak
yeah,
right
yeah,
now.
it's still in debate.
Yeah, but as an ordinary Zimbabwe, reading from the sentiments, an ordinary citizen, what I am more comfortable to share with you at the moment is that the assumption of the bill itself.
Yeah.
Obviously, it has a background that I alluded to. For a general Zimbabwean, one would want a justification as to that bill, but it's something that is already happened.
Yeah.
It's something sunk. It has already happened, and the justification whether it was used for the good of the nation.
That's something,
or not,
yeah.
but that's something else, and
Yeah.
we leave that for the politicians. I am an economist.
Yeah, well,
But what I can comment or what I can advise at the moment is that it has got a burden, a future burden, financial burden
On the rest of
implication
the-
on the taxpayers.
Yes.
Obviously, if it is funded from taxes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's something that we need to actually
Yes.
just
yeah.
watch on intently.
Yes, it's some.
Well, from the grapevine, I've heard that the banking sector is concerned about the exchange rates. 5-6 years ago, the exchange rates were one thing. Now there's something else that the government has assumed this bill. And in 5 years' time, when it's supposed to mature all these treasury bills, it's going to be probably another thing. And they're wondering, what rate are they going to use to basically when it comes to this money. So I don't know, in your opinion, Percy, what would be the best way for government to avoid these disputes when it comes to exchange rates?
Yeah.
Which exchange rates? I'm not so sure which exchange rates you are talking about. Maybe just a background to the debt. The debt was taken in foreign currency. I think what you are referring to here is,
for example,
the currency was rand,
Exactly.
euro.
Yeah, like different currencies.
yeah.
and-
So basically, how basically, because of course, like for example, in the time in which some of the debt was taken, the rand was
exchange rate
maybe
was
marginally stronger. Right
than
now,
it is now.
yeah, it's actually in a very weak position. So
Yeah. Also, maybe just a background to that. The debt was taken not as a lump sum or at one given point in
of
time.
course, yeah.
It was taken on a daily basis and was frozen and lumped together as a 31st of 2013. And the rate that was applying then is the one that was used by the central
Oh,
bank.
I see.
Whether one benefits or loses
Yeah.
due to that exchange rate movement is to do with whether your occurrence in which the debt was denominated appreciated or depreciated.
during
But
that
like I
time.
said, it's an issue before the parliament. It's a bill which is being debated by representatives, your own representatives being the parliamentarians. I think these are some of the issues that they will look into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but the TBs will mature in like 3, 4, and 5 years. Do you think government will be able to honor them and pay the depositors their money?
Yeah, I've spoken about the government's financial problems at the moment.
Yes.
And the 204 million that I spoke to, which was already issued in terms of treasury bills, it's going to be a tough task for the government to meet that. Let me just give you a background. If you listen to the midterm fiscal policy review, the minister categorically indicated that the government is in short of 260 million to meet the current expenditures in form of the civil servants wage bill.
Yes.
The government cannot operate without such current expenditures.
Of course.
And I foresee a situation where the government is going to roll over these TBs on maturities because of lack of capacity at the moment.
Yeah, so it's going to be
It's going to be a tough problem. And also, it is not only this debt that the government is paying. It is also saddled with another 10 billion debt, which it is paying under the staff monitored IMF staff monitored program.
Yeah, where
which
they're
they
trying
have to stick to.
return. Okay, pay back.
If you look
money.
at the half year, they have done 180.4 million repayments towards the total global debt. So they are in a tough situation.
Yeah, it's a really, really
Yeah.
tough
But
situation.
speaking of the IMF, Zim Papers recently hosted a breakfast meeting with the IMF discussing the country's debt. Do you think that by assuming the RBZ that the government is paving way for them to borrow from such bodies such as the IMF?
It's a strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, the government is currently working with the IMF under the Staff Monitored Program, which is a technical assistance program where the IMF is granting some technical assistance. And obviously, they are discussing issues to do with the debt. They've got a program where the government is to pay. I understand the Staff Monitored Program has been extended by another 6 months.
Yeah.
So
But-
can we be hopeful?
So I'm very hopeful, and even the sentiments from the country representative, finance, the IMF country representative, finance, he actually shaped some recommendation to the re-engagement, to the effect of re-engagement of Zimbabwe with the IMF.
Okay, one more last final question. What do you think are the possibilities to be unlocked by the re-engagement with the IMF for the banking sector?
Yeah, it was basically believed, or the Eastwire minister, Minister BT, thought the best way to go about the Zimbabwean debt
Yeah.
was to apply for what we call the HIPIC, the highly indebted poor country status.
Yeah.
Which IMF won't give us.
With the HIPIC,
Yeah.
there is an option for writing off of that
Some
debt.
of that debt.
That happened to Zambia.
Yeah.
But reading from the sentiments of Dominic Fennes, who is the IMF country representative,
Yeah.
what he said recently, he categorically said that Zimbabwe does not qualify for this assistance
He said
because
we're
it is not a poor.
psychologically poor.
It's not a poor
It's
country.
not a poor country. It has got potential, so we don't qualify. So that one is definitely out.
I mean, in terms of resources, if we were to share all our resources, we could actually be very rich people.
I wish.
But of course, anyway. Well, you've been listening. This is BH24 Business Around the Clock. And we've actually just had a full-on question and answer with our independent economist, Percy. It was great having you. And, I mean, sorry we couldn't take calls or questions, but feel free to actually send them through, you know.
And don't forget to subscribe to your daily copy. Send an email to bh24admin@zimpapers.co.zw. And join us next week again, same time.
Yeah, Twitter, BH24 Zim, and on Facebook, BH24. So
Good night, guys.